Well, hello and happy new year, friends. So today we're doing kind of the opposite of a video I would have posted about a month ago, and it's going to be taking down some Christmas stuff. Now, I, for a long time, have had this internal struggle with why would I do a video on taking down Christmas? But what I'm trying to do in this video is answer hopefully a lot of questions I've been getting. So if you've been following for a while, maybe you haven't, I happen to love Christmas, and I put up multiple trees. I have lots of delicate antique ornaments, along with just antique decor that you want to be a little careful with. And so I know a lot of people have been asking me how I store specific things. So this is going to be for you. If you have been asking those questions, hopefully I'm going to go over some of those things that you may wonder how I pack it away, even when it comes to just like standard ornaments on a normal Christmas tree. So I have some things kind of laid out on my dining room table as I've been taking them away from my kitchen and other areas in my house, including the living room here where I'm standing. And we're going to go over mostly how I pack them. Now, I'm gonna say, I don't think I necessarily pack them differently than other people or that I have a unique method, but I do know, because I learned the same way, that sometimes just watching what other people do, and you can see now some of the stuff is sitting behind me, is kind of helpful. It's helpful to see maybe what someone else puts away, maybe a tub or an item they use and how it works for them. So that's what I'm gonna be going over and showing you all the various ways I like to pack some things away to make sure they stay safe. That they don't have issues or damage to them, and so I can use them again for years to come. So I think it would be probably a good idea to start with some of the various items. I kind of want to talk about smaller things or things that are obviously more breakable. One of them is these containers. So I use these in a lot of various ways, and I kept the packaging here on a new one, just so you could see it is what I use. I'll try to add this, if I can, to my website onto my shop page. For anyone that wants to not go search for it themselves. But what it is just these plastic containers. And instead, so I use various sizes of plastic containers or tubs. You're gonna see I use some larger ones. I do use one size larger than that yet. I use more medium-sized ones. And then I use these because they break down into two individual sizes. And there's a very specific reason I feel like I use these. And so if I go over here and show you on one, this is where I put, these are Belschnickel Santas that are cardboard. And so these ones are from like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they're pretty delicate. So there's a snowman here too that was a candy container. So the bottom, you can see me here filming right here in that butler's ball. But the bottom comes off and pops out, and there would have been candy in here at one time. So some of these Belschnickel Santas are the same way. Now these are very, prone to if they would get wet. They would be obviously damaged, possibly beyond ear repair. If they would get smashed, they'll just crush because they're cardboard. So you want to keep them very protected. And that's why I like to put them in a single layer where I am not packing them on top of each other. So that's where a container like this comes in really handy because it's not big or deep enough like a large container to make them pack on top of each other. So what I'm doing with them is putting them in one layer at a time. And by layer, it means I can stack multiple things within here. So you can see underneath, I have different items that are not breakable as much. And then this top layer are these Santas. And what I do is make sure in between them, I put some bubble wrap. So just, again, when you're working with older things, but even newer things that are painted like this, the painting can become brittle and old. So like, let me see if I can find, okay. Like on this Santa specifically, if you look right in here, you see there's some paint that was coming off. Well, that could have just happened because of time, which obviously when it's this old, it's going to. But when you want to think about keeping it year to year, making sure it's not rubbing against something else, or it's not packed in the box and too tight with something else, that's going to help make sure that paint doesn't continue to deteriorate. So that's why I'm making sure these things have a little bit of bubble wrapping around them, just so they stay separated and don't hit each other, because then that little bit of friction could cause that paint to come off. So it's things like that I just make sure, and then this little Santa here I will put on top. I try to use the space as best as I can, but the older or more delicate something is, the more space I will give it, just to make sure. And that's why I really like, so I will use these same stacking containers for a lot of my ornaments. Like in my office upstairs, I have all of my pine cone antique ornaments. They get stacked in small layers within each of these, so there's never too much pressure on them. So there's only like, 2 or 3 layers of those ornaments with bubble wrap in between that will fit. And so that's why I put small containers for really delicate things. I just think that's kind kind of a good method and mode. Also, the smaller the container, the easier it is for us to haul it up and down if we're going to the basement like I am, or to an attic, or even to a closet. Just smaller containers are easier to move. The next thing I know a lot of you know about are bottle brush trees and how much I like them. So this is one that I'm very specific on. I usually use these medium-sized containers, and I keep them upright and do not let them be smashed on top of each other. So these I will just set in a container like this, all sizes. And then you can even see, usually small ones I'll put in a smaller container, but what I will try to do sometimes is if they're really short and small like this, I will kind of be able to nestle them underneath of a taller one. Then I can put like another taller one beside it. And that way you can pack more into it. But I never, because they get brittle, they get dry. You can even see down here is one that like had some needles that were lost on one, because this is what happens to anything that's old. It starts to dry out and it starts to lose things. So if you smash them together and jam them together, they'll be more prone to losing because they'll get stuck and you have to pry them apart, or you'll create really bad kind of indented spaces, which you can see here. See how the bottom of that got pushed up against one probably, and that's why it's misshapen now. So things like that I want to be careful with, and that's why I give them a larger container that allows them just to stand upright and not have to be smashed together. Now, sometimes they're too big. Like this is one of the largest old ones I have, and you can see it's probably at least around 18 inches tall. So this one I just actually put on a shelf by itself in the basement. I cover it lightly with plastic just so dust doesn't get on it as bad, because there's not a tub really big enough. Even a tall tub, it still doesn't fit in it with the top. So I leave that as is. There are certain things that aren't necessarily Christmas by look, but they're things I use at Christmas, and that goes for a lot of the Mercury glass. So you're gonna see it behind me all along the hutch, and then down the center of the table I used like these large butler's balls, and then different Mercury glass pieces, including I used here in the kitchen this nice little, it's not a cake stand I don't think, but a little stand that's Mercury glass that I really love. So for small items like this, and Mercury glass, if you don't know, is a hand-blown glass that has like a Mercury foil-backed lining pretty much inside, which gives it that silvery, beautiful color and look. It's very similar actually to the Kugel ornaments that are like on this tree right there. But those, it's very delicate glass. So again, I don't pack it in a big container. I use a container that will just keep it one level. And this is one of those sealed containers where it has a nice gasket here of rubber around the lid, and that traps out moisture from getting inside. So Mercury glass in general, like I said, it's kind of a lined backing that gives it that silver color. Well, if moisture gets too much in it or something over the year, it can start eating off that foil. So if you want to keep them dry. So that's why I like to keep them. And most things I'm slowly, not all my tubs are like this, but I'm slowly going towards tubs that have that gasket that create a seal. It just to me is better for anything if you can keep it more controlled as far as moisture goes over the year. So for a lot of these items, I will put those in these containers, and I use the same size container and everything for all the Kugel ornaments on this tree in the dining room here. All these again they're a heavy glass, so I wouldn't say they're as delicate that I'm afraid they're gonna break, but you wanna keep them from getting too much moisture in them and things like that. So I do keep them in those small containers that have that gasket, and I keep them just not stacked too tightly on each other. They have bubble wrap in between them all. Again, just so you prevent scratching. They have metal tops and those could etch each other, things like that. So what I thought we could do though, and just as a reminder, I have a few things I used here, like some silver plated things. And if you look, see how it's getting tarnished? I had these out from over at Christmas, some sterling in different pieces. And if I used them or if they've been sitting out because I had like chocolates in a bowl, things like that, before I put it away, and I will put them into silver bags, those blue bags that help keep the tarnish off, but I will shine anything I used before I put it away. So when I get it out again, it's not like, ugh, why did I not clean that up? What we're gonna do is go into here, the family room, so I can start taking apart. This is my mushroom tree. You know I love mushrooms. And this is kind of the tree that holds a lot of my favorite new. These are mostly all new. My antique mushrooms are usually upstairs. These are all new mushrooms. And they're delicate, obviously. They have long stems, they're glass, they're gonna break easily. And so what I wanna do is really dismantle this tree and talk about the process of putting away the different pieces on it. And I'm using a larger tub, so we'll talk about that and kind of how it fits together. So what you'll notice I do, and I know you can't see the coffee table here right now, but what I'm doing is I'm taking off usually all the like kind ornaments at once. So like, I usually know, just because of how I collect and how I purchase things, my ornaments I usually always have in numbers of 5 or 7 or 9, and I usually know of each one what I have. Most of these mushrooms I have 5 of each. And so I'm taking them off and then set them first all down together. I don't like, just for my method, there is a method to my madness, I don't like to take just all ornaments off and just throw them in the tub as I'm going so they're all mixed together. Because some years maybe I don't want to use one type of ornament. So if I pack them usually in their individual together, you know, colors and likeness, then I know as I'm getting them out, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna want all 5 of these or however many there are. And I can look for all the ones that look similar. So that's why I first go through and take off, kind of working from the outside in, I guess, but I take off any of the ones that are gonna be the same and I set them down in their matching sections. So then when I go to put them away, I can go through them all individually and know I'm putting them away in somewhat of an order. Now, okay, I get that like you don't have to do that and that it seems a little bit like a lot to think of, but at the same time, I don't know, I find enjoyment in knowing I'm packing my things with care and knowing how I'm putting them away. So when I get them out next year, I'm going to know what order they're in and what they're like. So I don't know, it's a process and I kind of like enjoy going through it like this. Here in front of me are most of the ornaments. Now you will see there's a few, so I have these wicker, just like bells. And what I like about these is obviously they're pretty much indestructible, but I put these away with the tree into the tree bag. Now I will show you the tree bag because usually it is something that for those that know, love them. For those that don't know, it's kind of mind blowing. But things like this that are indestructible, I will put in the tree bag and they fit inside of each other usually in their graduated sizes. So those I'm not too worried about. But in front of me are all the breakable, easily breakable ornaments. And you can see there's quite an array. It's always amazing what you can fit on a tree. I always push that boundary anyway, but there's quite a few. Now down here I have just more the spheres, ornaments themselves, kind of the background color that kind of gets stuck into the tree. These are all the ones that kind of go on the outside of the tree. And they range anywhere from super breakable to, these are foam. So really lightweight, very foamy. The ones that are kind of singles, they've either been given to me as gifts, things like that. I have those up above. But all these that are breakable, I start rating on how destructible or indestructible are they and how heavy are they. So things like these big balls go on the bottom of a larger tub. And what you're gonna see here, bubble wrap, obviously, I reuse every year. And there's already down here some ornaments that I did not put on this year just because I didn't want to. So they're just kind of vintage looking cars and they usually do look really good with this tree. I, for some reason, just this year decided I wasn't in the mood. So what I always have is the bottom is lined with some bubble wrap on a layer on its own that everything will sit on. And then I just start wrapping things individually in the bubble wrap. Now, obviously I'm putting on the bottom first, kind of the things I care least about, but also things that I think are least destructible, which these are glass, but they're pretty heavy glass and I'm just not worried about them breaking. So I always put them on the bottom and then I work my way to the top with the lightest weight things going on the top just because they're not going to crush anything by weight. I know that was sped up and so you're not seeing all the little details, but what you would kind of notice if you look closely is while I'm wrapping almost every ornament, I'm not wrapping every one. So if you look in here, since there's so much bubble wrap in between and around certain ornaments, as I get to these layers where they feel like it's all bubble wrap, I start placing ornaments on top of bubble wrap. Because when I take this out, I take them out piece by piece, I'm not dumping it out. So you can start placing certain ornaments to save bubble wrap, but also just there's no reason to waste so much in amongst all the wrapped ones. So it creates this layer of wrap around it without having to individually wrap each one. So I will start by wrapping most of them and then I'll start setting some in amongst the wrapping and then wrap around it as I need to. So none are ever touching each other, but they're all in between wrapping somehow. And what I do too is like I check. The reason this isn't a bigger tub, when I pick it up, it's still super lightweight. Like I bet this doesn't even weigh, I mean, hardly more than like a sack or two of flour. So what, 10 pounds maybe? And I don't even think it weighs 10 pounds. So as long as it's still lightweight, I'm totally comfortable packing more into this. So I do save also, a lot of the wrapping comes from when maybe I have received or bought ornaments. I'll save that wrapping. So like all these little bags of wrapping are these ones that look like little candies. They go back in that wrapping they came in. So I try to be economical as I can be and save what I can and reuse it, because I just feel like that works best. And usually, so a lot of ornaments will come in individual boxes with wrapping. Obviously that can take a lot of room. So I won't save each box, but I save maybe the bubble wrap it came in, and then I can use all that different wrapping to be able to safely pack it away, because bubble wrap really is one of the best ways. Tissue paper works well, but tissue can rub depending on the type of tissue paper. So I will use more bubble wrap if I have it, use tissue paper where needed maybe, and then I can individually wrap all of these up and it just works better. These even were all individually, I think they were in this like bag. Now you will also notice I try to keep all the hooks with the ornament that they're secured on. That doesn't always work, but it works pretty well. I don't want to take them obviously off. And so if one comes off, I will bend it so it sits back on. And if you've watched me, you know, I am a fan of old, if I can find them, the old hooks. I like sturdy metal hooks. Sometimes to me, ribbon, it looks good on certain trees. But on other trees, it can just look like too much and it gets a little bit like overwhelming. So I don't usually use it on any and everything. But as I'm packing these in here, I now have most of the very breakable things. So on top of all this, I can then just put these foam ones, which super lightweight. They're not gonna hurt anything with being on top. So that's how I try to gauge it. And same with these cardboard houses. Lightweight, they're not gonna break anything underneath. And then when the lid goes on, I make sure it's not too tight. One last thing to remember, never force the lid on your tub. If you go to put the lid on and it doesn't just fall into place and easily clip to secure it, if you have to push it all, don't do it. You're gonna open it up next year and you're gonna find broken ornaments and you're gonna be mad, okay? Because no one wants to break ornaments. So it could be that you're just overpacking it. Don't overpack it. This one still is actually very lightweight overall. Not worried about it. So tree bag, here it is. It's really simple. It's honestly a large nylon bag that has a zipper that you can buy sizes of. And they come in different, I mean, there's all different styles and shapes. What I like about them is they keep the mess somewhat simple. Most trees come apart in 3 sections. This one, I do admit, I took the lights off that came on it as a pre-lit tree because they went out, and I have put my own lights on it since, and it's one continuous strand. So I still take it apart in 3 sections, but it's kind of a weird maneuvering thing. But then I put it into this bag, I zip it up. I will put, you know, like I said, you can see there's some stuff in it from other years, like a garland I have used in the past. This garland I use, I do like it. Some ornaments I don't use. So if anything else fits in the bag that's not breakable, I'll do that. And then I hang this bag in my garage from the ceiling because there's plenty of height room that I have multiple bags like this. One for my dining room tree, this tree, my upstairs trees. And I put them in bags, hang them. They're out of sight, out of mind for until, 10 months from now when I'm gonna get them back out. And I know that's weird to say, but it's true, it comes. So that's what I will do with this tree, all my trees. You could do that with garland too. Anything that's just lightweight somewhat. Trees can be awkward to maneuver, but when they're in a bag like this, they're much easier. It would actually work really well to even put those resin, they're outdoor ornaments technically, resin outdoor ornaments. I use them by the mushroom tree for obvious reasons. It'd be nice to put those in the bag too, but they don't fit. So I put those in the basement as is. That's somewhat of a process of taking down things. And I do that same process for each tree. But like I said, it's the tub size that really determines how I change up what I'm storing. So the more delicate items, the smaller and smaller tubs they go in until I get to ones with individual layers like this, where I am not worried about pressing or breaking any of the ornaments. So the kugels will obviously go in that size container. I have about 4 or 5 of them that those go in with bubble wrap. So everything comes down, the trees go in tree bags, the tubs that they're in, so this one's in a big copper wash tub, that family room one is in a galvanized wash tub. Those go out to my shed. I clean them up when I get them back out next year, things like that. So that is how I put away some things. I hope it answers a few questions. It gives a little bit of insight into my process, because I get it. The number one question is, what do you do with all your Christmas stuff? I have a basement. It has shelves in it. It's an old basement. This is an old farmhouse from the late 1800s. The basement shows that, but it can hold shelves to keep everything off the floor in case I don't have a wet basement, but if there would ever be an issue. That's why I put it in plastic tubs with seals when possible. It gets stored down there. That's all the basement's used for. It has low ceilings, but it's just an old basement, so it works really well. And that's how it goes. So I hope you can see now, it's kind of a renewing process when we start, I think, to feel like that's what really brings us into a fresh new year, putting things away, cleaning up, and it's all done. So Happy New Year again. Merry belated Christmas, if I need to say so. And I hope it's going away, renewing yourself, refreshing, and getting the house back together.